The key to giving a 5-star experience is you have to be extremely competent and you have to be always looking several steps ahead. And it does take more effort and it does take more sophistication, and most people don't want to go to the trouble.
If it's not a 5-star experience, then it should not be a Novation. Like you've missed it. That's the whole point. And if you're not able to provide that initially, then you really should be considering JVing with someone like Rich and his team. Okay, welcome back, guys. This is video 6. Man, we've been doing so many videos. It's been a lot of fun here. I've got Rich Wonders, and we are really breaking down Novations. I hope you guys have been enjoying this masterclass. In this video here, we're gonna dive into how to create a 5-star experience, right? We talked about this quite a bit throughout this whole series about this white glove experience. And the way that Novations is really gonna work well is when you're creating this concierge service for the seller. That's the whole reason why they want to do a Novation with you, is because you're taking this complicated thing or this scary thing or this problem in their life and you're making it such a smooth, simple, easy process to work with you that they want you to just take all the heavy lifting and they want to sit back and just reap the benefit of a price you promised them, from the get-go. So if you missed the boat on that, I hope you guys have gathered that throughout the series. If you missed the boat on creating that experience, then you've completely missed out on what a Novation even is. And so it's really important now that to kind of bring this all back home, that you're doing the things that are going to create a really amazing experience for that seller. And so guys, before we kick it off with Rich, if you don't know, we have a playlist link with all of these videos where we're putting this into a masterclass series. And we also have some great resources for you, some free resources in a quick start kit, also in the description. And also, stay to the end, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can JV and partner with Rich and his team on Novation Deals so that you literally can earn money while you're learning how to do this. So super cool. So Rich, take this away for us. Why are we dedicating an entire video to having a 5-star experience for a seller?
So this is the cornerstone to not only having a happy seller and making sure the deal gets completed, but it's also the cornerstone to making sure that this strategy stays viable, right? Because here's the thing. If people are preaching and teaching, not giving them a 5-star experience, there's gonna end up being a trail of all these sellers that were harmed. And there's, since you are dealing with licensed agents, you are dealing with lenders, you're dealing in multiple markets, there could be just a blanket ban on this whole thing. And just morally speaking, right? We all want to do good business where everybody comes out ahead.
Or at the least, regulation that's unnecessary, that makes it harder to transact.
Correct.
I mean, what I found is, because I'm a big advocate for wholesaling at a higher level with ethics and morals. And we are seeing now in the wholesaling world, lots of regulation coming down. And some regulation might make sense. A lot of it's not going to make sense. Because what's happening is you have the 5% that ruin it for the other 95% that are doing things right.
Yeah.
But the way that the consumer advocates work and the protection agencies is all it takes is one bad actor to ruin it for everybody. And we see that. And that's the government's going to come in and they're going to ruin it for everybody for the few that are doing things wrong. So the more that we can operate on a high level, do good to the world, do good to sellers, then the more that this can stay a viable opportunity for more people.
Yes. Yeah, so I would say the first step of the 5-star experience is going to be the transparency and setting the proper expectations. And that happens when you're reviewing the contract paragraph by paragraph, how we were explaining in some of the other videos. So that's step number 1. They need to understand what's going on. Now, there's a time and place to explain that. We don't explain that in the discovery call, right? We explain that after we've sold the sizzle and we're going through the paperwork. But they need to have a clear understanding that, 1, you're selling to a third party. 2, you have the option of utilizing the MLS and working with the local agent. They need to understand the time period, okay? And the time period is extremely important that you stick to it, because that is one of the cornerstones of the 5-star experience. Is their expectations being met on the window? You can't try to get greedy and squeeze every penny out of these deals. And I've even heard of people signing 3-4 month contracts. Don't do that. Unless the seller just wants it that long, it's not a good, because even if they think that up front or they're somewhat flexible, it's much better to have these faster, because as soon as it gets off your whiteboard, then you've monetized it, and time kills all deals like we were talking about before. So making sure we stick to the timeline. Another thing is making sure that you do your proper due diligence beforehand. Okay, so you don't have to renegotiate, you don't have to extend the timeline. And we were talking in another video how you utilize the agents for that. Another part of that is making sure you get detailed condition information in the discovery phase and detailed situational information in the discovery phase. This is another reason why it's so important to have the discovery phase be non-negotiation and non-confrontational, because once you open up that adversarial relationship where you're going back and forth on price, very often they will now shut down on divulging personal or vulnerable information because they have the fear that it'll be used against them, right, as part of the negotiation. So the better we are at the discovery phase of getting them to reveal everything, then we can now provide the perfect solution for those issues that they discussed, right? And here's some examples of things that we help people with. Finding their next place. It's a very common one, right? Maybe they're going to rent. We can hook them up with a real estate agent or an apartment finder or some person that, for the seller, making all those calls, maybe time schedule wise, maybe they're not technology proficient, maybe they're older, maybe they're going to like a care facility or something. We can hook them up with someone that's going to drive them around and they actually get a commission from the care facility, not from the seller, where there's no cost. And these are all little things that for us, we have all the resources and bandwidth to help them or find someone that can help them. And for them, this is a great cause of anxiety for them.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. For you, it's a simple solution, right?
Correct.
Packing and moving and finding a new place is like super overwhelming.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, it's like, well, we can solve that problem, not a big deal.
Yeah, maybe they're working 60 hours a week, or maybe they have health issues. And for them, it's just, it's been hanging over their head, and it's something we can solve in a few days or a week. Sometimes too, they don't have money to move, or there's a bunch of stuff in the house and they don't have the means to hire someone. They don't even know where to start with it. That's something where we can do it fairly easily. Normally what we do is we get a pod storage where they drop it off if the person's able-bodied and they want to do it, or we'll hire some movers. And a lot of times we'll leverage the agent to find some movers where they're not going to charge us an arm and a leg, right? They're going to do a good job. They have an existing relationship that they want to protect. So we're going to get the best movers at the best price, right? Or at least at a fair price at the very least.
Are you doing any occupancy after closing?
Generally, no.
Okay.
Because that's very hard to pull off with the retail buyers. Not impossible.
Yeah.
But normally we try to find an alternative solution, which normally getting them some temporary housing is the best fit, because then once they have their money, too, then it's kind of on them. Once the transaction's closed and is done, we maybe set them up for a week after that, and then it's kind of their responsibility. Depending on the deal, how much equity we have in the deal, then we can give them more an elaborate solution, right? So another reason why, negotiating the properties and not trying to just squeeze by with a tiny profit, because there's not any margin for you to actually help them, right? Then at that point, you're just essentially a flat fee broker that they're hiring, and then you're just outsourcing the agent. You're not really adding a lot of value to the transaction. So you need enough margin in there where you actually can provide some tangible value.
So I think you mentioned this earlier in one of the previous videos, but part of your discovery is finding out their next play.
Correct.
Like when you sell, where are you going?
Yes.
Because you don't want that to become an objection later when now it's time to move and they're not able to, or
Correct.
Are having struggle with that.
Yes. And all the problems we try to get on early, and that's why getting the proper due diligence is extremely important. Because the last thing you want to do is start spending money and then you come and find out you have to renegotiate with them or let the deal go. It's not a 5-star experience. So the key to giving a 5-star experience is you have to be extremely competent, and you have to be always looking several steps ahead. And it does take more effort and it does take more sophistication, and most people don't want to go to the trouble to do it. And that's why for most people, honestly, they're much better off just JVing until they're ready to invest the time and energy to learn how to truly do this right. This is not a hack. This is not a get rich quick.
Yeah. It's not a quick fix. Yeah.
It's not a quick fix. It's something that you really have to be diligent, because you're essentially having a vulnerable person's life in your hands.
Yeah.
So you have to take that on as like a moral responsibility as well. But yeah, helping them move, Doing some minor repairs, depending on the profit margin, will depend on what comfort level I have in doing upgrades. And obviously on a higher price point house, having simple things being wrong could be detrimental to, well, you know, once you get above, say, $600,000-$700,000, you're having a more sophisticated buyer, more sophisticated agent, and they're looking at simple repairs not being done as maybe a red flag of other more major things that aren't done, even if that's not even the case.
Yeah, and that part of it really comes down to a conversation with your expert listing agent, talking about what those issues are, and then preemptively solving those problems. So like, for example, we did one recently where the roof was like borderline. You know, it was 15 years, you know, it wasn't leaking, but yet, and so the listing agent said, the expert agent said, this is going to be an issue. Like I'm telling you right now, I know this market, buyers are going to bring up this roof and it could potentially become a problem for us. So I said, okay, what's our solution? So we ended up getting 3 bids from, and the agents, contractors, right? Agent helped with this, 3 bids. And then we ended up getting a buyer, and the buyer coming, knowing that they're going to have an issue with this roof. We said, look, we know the roof is marginal. We've actually got 3 bids here. We're willing to give a seller credit. And this was all ahead of time, right? So this was built into the whole deal. But now we said to the buyer, here's a contractor, here's a credit at closing. So we're not fronting money now. We're giving a credit at closing to solve a problem that we know is going to come up. And we're doing all this ahead of time. Like that's, and again, that's a 5-star experience for a seller, because if the seller's got to figure all that out, well, then what are we doing here?
For sure.
So now the seller gets what they wanted, which was hands off, everything getting handled.
Yeah, so it all goes down to you being an expert at the seller's needs, and then you being the rainmaker that brings in the other people for the things that aren't your expertise. So it's all about leveraging high-level people, and that's how they get the 5-star experience. And think about it like a 5-star restaurant, okay? Even the busboy scrapes your crumbs, make sure your water's filled. Everybody's on point. I know this because I worked at fine dining like back in a past life, right? Your shirt has to be pressed. It has to be clean. You can't have a stain on the shirt. And the thing is, when you pay attention to all the details, that's what gives the magic. And that's the same with the sales process. It's all about paying attention to the details and the basics. And when they all stacks up, that's when the experience becomes magical, because it's a culmination of all these things. And the higher level experience you're trying to give them, any missteps snap out of that magic, right? Like if you're at the 5-star restaurant and your waiter shows up and there's a massive ketchup stain, it may not ruin your dinner, but it's just a little thing where you're like, and especially if it looks like it was from the shirt was washed, it didn't happen that night, right? You're like, really? I'm spending $500 for a dinner for 2. Like, can I get a guy with a clean shirt? And maybe people don't care, maybe they do. But you have to have that mentality of, hey, there may be mistakes that happen, but anything we can control and preemptively put a process in place for, let's do that.
Yeah, and I think kind of maybe to wrap up this video here is creating that 5-star experience. If you don't really have your model dialed in, your systems dialed in, it's probably going to be hard right out of the gate to go start novating deals and provide a 5-star experience, because you're just not set up yet.
Correct.
Right? Like that's a process to build the right team, the right sales, the right fulfillment on all of this. And so this is where, setting now the pinnacle of what this should look like. Just know two things I think that you really need to know is, if it's not a 5-star experience, then it should not be a novation. Like you've missed it. That's the whole point. And if you're not able to provide that initially, then you really should be considering JVing with someone like Rich and his team that is going to provide that. So that's why this probably isn't, a right out of the gate newbie type of strategy, because you're just not set up to give them that experience.
And you are going to spend some money.
Yeah, maybe you can figure it out, right? Like maybe you can, but there's a good chance that you're going to give them a 3-star experience and charge them a 5-star rate.
Correct.
And that's the problem, like you said, at the restaurant. Like if I leave the restaurant and I paid $500 and I had to wait for water or ask for water, I'm pretty bent out of shape.
Right.
Even if it's not really a big deal, it's a big deal. It becomes a big deal because you're expecting something better.
Correct.
And so that's the whole point here. So what I love about this, Rich, is you've taken your team, your processes, everything that you guys have now really mastered and dialed in, and now you're offering to the marketplace, you listening right now, an opportunity for them to start to do these deals, participate in the upside of earning without necessarily having the 5-star experience ready.
For sure.
Right? And that's cool. That's really cool. I love that. And so guys, just know that that's available for you. Don't think that you've got to now somehow invest all this money into building this process right out of the gate. Like anything, it's developmental. So use the resources available to you, which could be Rich and his team, with hopefully the hope that you can learn how to transact at a high level and provide that 5-star experience.
Absolutely.
But I think probably, Rich, the biggest thing I got out of this series so far is that a novation isn't just replacing a contract for another contract. Like that's the mechanics of it. But really a novation in the marketplace is providing a 5-star experience and getting a seller a much higher price than a convenient, fast cash offer. That's the point. And that's the business model that you can build an entire business around.
Correct. Yeah, you nailed it.
Awesome. Guys, so be sure to check out some of the resources we have, free quick start kit, also some information about how to partner and JV with Rich and his team. Be sure to check the playlist there. What else am I missing? If you want some more high-level training on how to build this business model, you can also get some more information in the description below as well for that. Appreciate you guys. Leave a comment too and let us know. 2 things. Leave a comment and say, Rich, you're a flipping genius. Thank you for your expertise. And also, if you have a question or something that's unclear to you, put that as well, and we'll do our very best to respond to those. We'll see you guys on the next video.